Iowa State versus Arizona State in the Big 12 championship game could be decided by a few key players. Today, Richie Bradshaw of Locked On Sundevils and I break it all down. Don't go anywhere.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It's the Big 12 championship game this Saturday. ASU's favored, but should they be favored? I'm sitting down with Nick Marv from Locked On Cyclones. Nick, I appreciate the time, and hopefully me and you can get a little bit of banter back and forth as we debate who's going to win this game.
Well, let's try to keep it pretty cordial here. I think everybody's happy to just be in the game, so let's not get too hostile.
Yeah, and I like that you bring that up before we even get started with this stuff. Neither of these teams were supposed to be this far. ASU was picked 16th in the media poll. I want to say Iowa State was like 8th or 9th, something like that.
Sounds right.
Yeah, so I mean, it's pretty cool to see how everything shaked out. Obviously, BYU and Colorado were right in the thick of it too. We didn't see any of the preseason ranked teams really have a chance. K-State was right there before kind of fell off at the end of the season. But what a way to end the year. What are the vibes and aims like right now?
Oh, the vibes are immaculate. They really are. When you look at the schedule as a whole, you start the season 7-0. And as you said before the season, Cyclone fans, you're always going to be hopeful. But there is an element of we're still the Cyclones, an element of we hold it back, just kind of keeping our expectations in check. When we went, I think probably you could go as far back as 2-0 when we beat Iowa. All of a sudden, it's a Cyclone state. National championship or bust. Okay, then you win 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it's looking clear as day. Big 12 championship, we're here to play. Then you drop 2, and it becomes, we are still the Cyclones. I can't believe I put my trust in this team. God, it's where we're at. Then all of a sudden we turn around, 3 in a row, bang, bang, bang. Everybody feels like we're completely back, and that hope at the beginning of the season was in fact justified. We do have a really good team. The fact that it came into that like 97%, it wasn't quite winning in, threw some vibes off a little bit, but hey, we're in, we earned our ticket, and we can't wait to play.
It's a really exciting time for both of these programs. But before we get too far into our key players to start the show, I do want to give a shout out to our friends over at FanDuel. You can start the season big with FanDuel. New customers, if you place a $5 bet, you can get started with $150 in bonus bet as long as that bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, let's start with some key players, and I'm going to hand it off to you first because Iowa State is a team that I look at, and there may not be any like superstars or anything like that. There are some stars for sure, and there are some guys that have been winning football games for Iowa State all year long. We'll start with the offense. Who are some of the guys that stand out for you that ASU fans need to be aware of?
Well, you mentioned no superstars, and I guess I could probably agree with that, but we do have, in my opinion, the best wide receiver duo in the nation. I may be incorrect in this, but I'm pretty sure it's the only school with a wide receiver duo in which both have over 1,000 yards. And I'm pretty sure that's right, so I'm going to say it with my chest, and I think it's deserving. But let's not go to that obvious side of things. It's going to be the running backs for Iowa State. That is going to be you want to talk about key players needing to step up onto that pedestal. It's Carson Hansen and Abu Sama. How does that shake out? I'm not quite sure. Generally, Carson Hansen is a run between the pads, up the A, B, C gap, really just kind of getting those 2-3 yard gains, chipping away through the course of the game. And Abu Sama is a little bit more of a receiving option, maybe swing it outside. Not that he can't do both, but you know exactly what I mean when you have a dual-headed monster that way. I don't know exactly what our plan is going to be, and I am not an offensive coordinator, so I'm not going to completely step outside my bounds here, but they have to do their job. They have to step up, because if we make Rocco go just through the air and we rely just on his arm, I think we will be in trouble.
Looking at that ground game, it's not like this, oh my God, we have an ace guy who's like 1,000-yard guy. But if you look at the numbers, you have 24 touchdowns total as a team. Hansen has 11 touchdowns. This is a team that has definitely dominated through the air. I would agree with you. This is one of the best duos at wide receiver in the country. At a minimum, they're the best in the Big 12, and I don't think it's really comparable. But how does your passing game really set things up for the run game where even though you don't have a 1,000-yard runner, you still have guys that are super productive.
Yeah, I think Carson Hansen has just right around half as many touches as Scatabo, which I'm sure you'll touch on in your, offensive key players here. But the production is actually pretty good realistically, and I think it is opened up by that pass game, forcing opposing teams to not load the box the entire game. You just can't get beat over top. We've got a lot of speedsters out there, and then I love our drag routes when we don't go sprint out. Now, sprint out. I'm not a fan of the sprint out game, and we love that for some reason. But if we bring crossers, our tight ends, maybe a slot guy here and there, that 2, 3, 4 guy in the lineup, that's where I think we really open up that run game.
Looking at ASU's run game, it's no secret that Cam Scatabo is the man in that backfield. Over at Locked On Sundevils, we call him the people's running back. He does everything, and he's your mom's favorite player. Everyone is very aware of how good he is. There's a Heisman case for him. He's been seen in that top 10 range, and that's with missing a football game. He's been terrific this year. Obviously, everything starts and ends with him on offense. He's a great runner. He has a nose for the end zone. He catches the football very good as well. But if you didn't see, or if anyone else did not see, Jordan Tyson, the Sun Devils' #1 receiver, is out for the remainder of the year. He had some kind of surgery on, I think they said on Tuesday was when he was officially announced out for the year. There's a huge drop-off between him and the second leading receiver on the team, which, fun fact, is Cam Scatabo. This is going to be a very different looking ASU passing attack. And Sam Levitt, another guy to keep an eye out on, has been great this year. He was rated the highest freshman or redshirt freshman in the country. He was one of, I would say, no worse than the 3 best quarterbacks in the Big 12 this year. But a lot of the production went through Tyson. Tyson's gone. They're going to be looking at Xavier Guillory as their potential wide receiver 1. But as I would like you to inform ASU fans, if there's a secondary you don't want to throw on, it's probably this one.
Yeah, there's one thing for sure. When I looked at the stats for Tyson, I have never in my life seen a player that is such a strong cornerstone and or #1 option for a team. I mean, it's unbelievable. I want to give him his flowers because, all prayers up to him. And there is a piece of me that's very thankful we don't have to play him this weekend.
Sure.
You guys have, kind of, well, I'll say depleted because that's how big he is in the pass game.
Call what it is. Yeah.
I'm sure you're looking for the stat of the day. Iowa State 3rd against the pass, allowing, I think it was like 159 or 156.9 or something like that. I'm a little dyslexic with the numbers there, but 3rd in the nation at stopping the pass. So if we can do that, that's going to be huge. And obviously, it's not that ASU doesn't have players, but you're going up against Iowa State here.
No, and I mean, that's just a fact of the matter. Not only one of the best in the Big 12, one of the best in the country. And ASU's got some issues at receiver once you leave Jordan Tyson behind, and that secondary is elite. I was telling you before we got started in my preseason Big 12 media poll, I had both of your safeties as guys to finish first team. They are going to finish first team this year.
Absolutely. And if you want to ask about defensive players, I'll just pick one.
Please,
Beau Freyler.
yeah.
It's Beau Freyler. I mean, we've got guys all over, but realistically, Beau Freyler, one of the heavier guys kind of in that secondary, almost looks like a linebacker in some aspects of the game, but still can move around at the safety position. I need to see him flying downhill and filling gaps. I don't know what exactly scheme they'll be running because, like I said, this week, all week, I've been saying I don't know how the Cyclones are going to adjust to no Tyson. Maybe they bring, Beau up into the box. Maybe he is playing a Sam or a Mike situation there. I don't know. And like I said, not an OC, not a DC, but he needs to fly around and help in the run game because the secondary, I think they've got it covered.
Yeah, I don't think ASU is going to be throwing for a lot of yards in this game. The 150 average around that ballpark you guys give up, I think they're going to be right around there, but it'll be up to ASU to run the rock. For defense on ASU, it comes down to our own safety, Shamari Simmons, who's moved into a nickel role this year, and he's been phenomenal. As a nickel defender, he's able to set the edge against the run game. He's a great pursuit guy. He's someone who has totally taken on a big-time leadership role for the team. If there is a Sun Devil on defense that is going to be pivotal to this matchup, it is going to be Shamari Simmons. But I'll tell you what, we're going to go ahead and transition into the next part of the show as we talk about how Iowa State slows down Arizona State and how Arizona State slows down Iowa State. But before we get that far, our friends at FanDuel have a very interesting line for ASU and Iowa State in this game. That's coming up next on the Locked On Sundevils and Locked On Cyclones crossover episode. Obviously, today's episode is sponsored by our friends at FanDuel. And NFL fans, you can get ready to attack the action with America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers, if you bet $5, you will get $150 in bonus bets as long as that bet wins. And it can be on anything. That can be a money line. That can be a spread, a player prop, whatever. Speaking of spreads, ASU versus Iowa State this weekend is getting a spread of 2.5 points favoring ASU. Nick, what do you think of that?
I mean, if you're going to give me the Iowa State Cyclones at plus money, I'm going to take it.
Speaking of plus money, Iowa State plus 105 in this game as well. If you're a Cyclone fan and you're feeling confident, and probably should feel confident with that team, might not be a bad idea to throw a couple of shekels on that. And if you are interested in doing that, well, I got good news for you as well, because you can place live bets. And if you want to make sure that you are confident with your live bet, in the same app where you're making your bets, on the same page where you're making your bets, you can see a live play-by-play, the latest stats on more, and make sure that you are comfortable and confident with that bet. Just visit FanDuel.com today and get started. New customers, a $5 bet will get you $150 in bonus bets as long as it wins. Go to FanDuel.com and join today. Never waste a hunch with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and an official partner of the NFL. We appreciate each and every single one of you guys for tuning in to make Locked On Sundevils and Locked On Cyclones your first listen of the day. Richie Bradshaw here with Nick Marv, and we are talking the Big 12 championship game. We just talked about our key players to the game, but it's not just about the players. It's about strategy and how you are going to stop the opposing team. If ASU wants to beat Iowa State this game, to me, it's pretty simple. And by simple, I mean, on paper, you can write it down. Now it's a matter of executing. You've got to find a way to slow down this receiver duo. They are both over 1,000 yards. Is it Jayden Higgins? Yes, Jayden Higgins and Jaylin Noel. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Noel. Yep.
Noel. Okay. Yeah, they're beasts. They're both over 1,000 yards. They have each combined for 15 touchdowns. ASU's got to find a way to slow down this passing attack, but, you know, things are easier to say out loud than they are to actually execute on the field.
That's exactly right. They play it out between the white lines there on the hash marks. And so that's exactly where I'm kind of going. Was on paper, it seems simple. Iowa State just needs to keep the Arizona State receivers at bay and attack Scatabo. But can that actually happen? I mean, it's so easy to say. It really is. And all week I've kind of been in the boat of, you know, if this is a defensive showdown or an offensive shootout, I'm completely okay with that. My answer to the key, I guess, how is Iowa State going to win this game, is the turnover battle and field position to me. Because if Iowa State, I think they can hang in a defensive shootout. I think they can hang in a what, you know what I'm saying, shootout or showdown. Yeah. And so if they give up the ball, though, I think we're plus 10 on the year in turnovers, and that's been key to a lot of games. Field position in this one going to be huge. 3rd and 4th down we've talked about all week. Iowa State's inability to convert is troubling, but if we can keep it close and just chip away with field goals, I like that quite a bit.
You bring up the turnover differential, and that's another really important thing for both of these teams. ASU is another team that's positive in the turnover differential. So what that tells me between these two teams, if someone makes a mistake, if Sam Levitt throws an interception, if Rocco, is it Becht?
Yes.
If Rocco Becht throws an interception, that could be a huge turning point in this football game for either one of these teams. The second way that I believe ASU can slow down Iowa State is very literally slow them down by keeping them on the sidelines. This is a game where time of possession, I don't know about you, Nick. The way I see time of possession, it can be the most important stat or it can be the most overrated stat when you are looking at a football game. This could be either one because ASU, let's say they win time of possession. Let's say about 35 minutes for ASU, about 25 minutes for Iowa State. Here's the thing. Iowa State's coming on the field and they're scoring touchdowns on 4-play drives that take up a minute and a half. I mean, at that point, time of possession isn't that big a deal. In theory, what you would like to do as ASU is just run the ball consistently. Cameron Scadaboo is great. They've got some depth too. Kyson Brown is a name to watch. Sam Levitt can run the ball as well. If they're able to run the ball consistently enough to keep Iowa State on the sidelines, in theory, you should be able to win this game. But again, passing it to you, there's times where time of possession just kind of an overrated stat.
Yeah, no, if you want to look at a prime example of that, Farmageddon last year, Snowmageddon, if you will. Iowa State versus Kansas State. I don't think we had a single red zone drive and scored, I don't even know, over 7 touchdowns, I believe. So that is just, it's a different team, yes, but it is a prime example of that kind of thing playing a role in how much does it really matter, right? That's statistics for you. You can swing it either way, and I'm just going to swing it the other way really quick for the listeners out there. It terrifies me if Arizona State is able to keep the offense off the field for Iowa State, that is, more in the aspect that our defense gets worn down. I would actually like to see Iowa State keep the ball as well, just to keep our defense fresh, because you're going to need every ounce of power you can muster to go up against Scadaboo there. I mean, I love long, explosive plays. I'm a huge fan. Obviously, it gets everyone up out of their seat and everyone's fired up, and I'm sure AT&T Stadium will be roaring on the 14 times Iowa State scores from 99 yards away. But realistically, I don't know if I want to get, like, towards the end of the game, that's gonna build, right? That's going to become a problem really quick if we don't run away with it.
Flipping the script, I talked about how ASU slows down Iowa State. You talked about how Iowa State slows down ASU. Talking about our own teams, how does ASU, or how will Iowa State slow down ASU according to the ASU guy, and vice versa? For me, for Iowa State to slow down ASU, what you need to do is score points. What a concept, right? But it's the ability for Iowa State to have the big plays and force ASU into a position where they're consistently playing from behind. ASU, more often than not this year, is playing with a lead, which has allowed them to control the clock and run the football as much as they can. But let's make an example. Let's say Iowa State has the first possession of the game, whether they elect to receive or ASU elects to defer, whatever. And Iowa State comes out, opening drive, however long it takes, they end with a touchdown. ASU's next drive, let's say they go 3 and out, and then Iowa State's next drive results in another touchdown. This is where Iowa State can slow down ASU, because now ASU, whose game script I would imagine is going to be running the football pretty heavily, they might have to change that up. And without Jordan Tyson, throwing against that secondary might not be the best way for them to go. That's how Iowa State would slow down ASU, according to my perspective. Flip the script for you, though.
It's funny how similar it is. Realistically, if Arizona State can shut down Iowa State's run game, I don't want to put all of our trust in Rocco here. You force him to do too much and it becomes a problem. Look at our 2 losses this year to Tech and Kansas. They really tried to go through Rocco's arm. I think he threw for 348 in one of those. You say, oh, that's a lot of yards. That's a good thing, right? Well, do we care about the win or how many yards our quarterback has passing? Realistically, we want to add numbers to the win column. So if we force Rocco to just start slinging the rock, not that he can't, not that he's not an accurate passer, because he absolutely is when he plays within the bounds of his game. If he starts to go too crazy here, we might see inaccurate passes that lead to pick sixes, which is just kind of the name of the game. And if you ask around Iowa State right now, that is the biggest concern outside of actual like schematics and such along those lines. It's really, can Rocco keep his passes in check? And I think if we not limit in the fact of like he can't throw that many times, but in the game plan, he has to stick within his bounds and we'll be okay.
Well, that's how ASU slows down Iowa State. That's how Iowa State slows down ASU. But how do you get the win? That's coming up next on the Locked On Sundevils and Locked On Cyclones crossover here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. One more time, we appreciate each and every single one of you for making Locked On Sundevils and Locked On Cyclones your first listen of the day. And of course, a shout out to our everydayers who are here every day. Sitting down here, I'm Richie Bradshaw, sitting down with Nick Marv. Locked on Cyclones. This is a fun game. This is a very exciting game. FanDuel's got some fun lines for us. If you guys haven't checked them out, America's #1 sportsbook, definitely check them out. Iowa's plus odds. If you're a Cyclones fan, you live in Ames, wherever, you might want to throw down a couple of shekels. ASU fans, you should be happy you're favored, but we will wait and see how that turns out for you, because how are you going to win this game? Let's start with Iowa State. What is the biggest way, if this happens, Iowa State wins the game, and we'll not just say gets the win, we'll say comfortably gets the win if this happens?
It's tough because realistically, the answer is play better football. Okay, that's boring. That's the entire game. You can't say that. That's like,
Right.
What else would you do? Do better in the presser? That doesn't make any sense. So
Score
I'm going
more
to try to
points?
narrow it. Yeah, literally exactly what I'm saying. So try to narrow it down to 3 here. With the turnover battle, I really want to put emphasis on. It does feel a little bit cliche, but I think I think the teams in this game can go back and forth, and if you get an extra possession, that's going to be huge. I don't think we can overstate how important Iowa State's special teams is. Blocked field goal against Kansas State last week obviously proved to be very pivotal in that game. Decent return game out of Noel and Higgins. Obviously, those returners are legends. They really are kind of cementing their place in Iowa State lore right now, and they need to step up. I think if the special teams field is completely level, Iowa State probably struggles here. And the biggest one for me, it's Iowa State needs to come out hot. They absolutely can't get in a hole early. If they do, they're going to be facing Cam Scadaboo over and over and over and over and over. And that's the recipe for disaster. I simply can't have that. Obviously, Iowa State's passing attempts are one of our strong suits with Higgins and Noel, but I just can't face Scadaboo over and over and over and over.
I got some good news for you about your blocked kick. ASU has one of the worst special teams units in the country, and one of the worst I've ever seen. 3 different kickers have rolled out this year. Each one of them has attempted 1 field goal. Combined, they are 50%, 8 of 16 on field goal attempts. They have made, if I can do math here, 4 of 13 beyond 30 yards.
Oh, my goodness.
If ASU is going to win this game, it's going to have to be just outright. Since their second bye week, so they've played 5 games since then, ASU is 1 of 2 on field goals. 5 games.
Oh, my.
It took up until their 3rd game from the bye week to kick a field goal, and then last week they shanked, are you ready for this? A 21-yard field goal. Shanked it. Pushed it. I've never seen anything like this special teams unit. And after seeing Iowa State get that blocked punt, I will tell you, I'm pretty nervous about that. Just curious, what's your special teams unit like, period?
Well, I'll say this much first and foremost. You obviously haven't seen me attempt a 21-yard field goal, which is probably for the better.
We'll get you on game day.
Yeah, for real. Pat McAfee would be happy if I was kicking, that's for sure. I think realistically, our special teams, the field goals here and there is going to be, if you guys have to kick, that's good news. I actually did not know that. Full transparency there, and that is super reassuring. Hammer Iowa State plus 2.5 now. And obviously Kyle Conrarty's had his struggles throughout the year. Slippery turf. Obviously, Iowa State stormed the field last week against Kansas State, which to me was a weird decision. But hey, I was down there on the turf, and that when it gets that cold, I mean, it was super, super cold. The dirt is rock hard, and there wasn't that much grass. So it was kind of slippery, which is going to play into a kicker. Obviously, in a dome, in a warmer environment, things are going to play into his hand a little bit better. I like Kyle Conrarty to kick probably at least 2 field goals in this game, and he's going to nail them both. He made the 54-yarder to beat Iowa. But I do think our return game on the punt game, with that field possession battle I mentioned earlier, is going to be pretty big.
I mean, that's just one thing that most teams have had an advantage on ASU this year, and it doesn't appear that's going to be changing for the rest of the year. But, I mean, I don't know who could be worse besides some peewee football team at this point in time. If ASU is going to win this game, and like we said, not by 1 or 2 points, if ASU is going to win comfortably, a couple things have to happen. First, Cam Scadaboo, the people's running back as we call him, needs to get going. I'm putting a minimum of 120 rushing yards in this game, which, I mean, he's averaging well over 100 rushing yards in every game this year. He has a 262-yard performance, and he has flirted with 200 yards more than a couple other occasions this year. If he gets going against no offense, a suspect run defense, there is a chance that ASU will be able to run rampant and then, win time of possession. And that's another key to me is, as overrated as it can be, this might be a game where time of possession could dictate whoever wins. If Iowa State is able to get up early, they're going to force ASU to pass the football, which they can, but it's going to get away from their biggest strength of running the football, and now the time of possession is a little wobbly. If ASU can continue to run the football, they're going to control that. Everything else falls into place. This is also a game, and this goes for Iowa State too. Mistakes can't happen. That's every game. Even more this game, though, because both teams have the plus ratio when it comes to forcing turnovers against giving up turnovers. So if you get on the wrong side of that, that's going to be a really interesting situation for both of these teams to potentially face.
Yeah, I think, with that turnover situation, if they were to turn the ball over, either one of these teams, obviously, first things first, you don't want the team to score on the turnover. That's a given, right? You don't want to give up a pick six or a fumble for six. That's easy money. But then it comes down to stopping the other team. If Iowa State can hold Arizona State to a field goal off a turnover, we're looking okay. But I don't know if you have the exact stats. I just know that Arizona State hasn't been the best maybe in the red zone. I think I saw that somewhere. Iowa State we've done okay. We've definitely done okay. So I think this game also comes down to red zone conversion rates, and then obviously third and fourth down. But like I said, I'm just kind of spitting out buzzwords right now. These are obviously things you need to do well to win games. But really, to me, it's going to be preventing points off the turnovers. If they do happen, you have to mitigate damage.
ASU is, I would call them pretty average, maybe slightly above average in red zone. They're not elite. They're not horrible. Where ASU has been elite this year is third down conversions. It is very difficult to get them off the field this year. So that's another key for Iowa State, if you would, to win this football game, is being able to get off the field. And for what it's worth, punting is very hit and miss for ASU this year. They got a freshman kid named Kenyon Floyd. He can boom it, but then there's also times where, he looks like a freshman. So it's inconsistent, but getting ASU off the field would be a really big way for Iowa State to win this game. And going back to the previous segment for how to slow down ASU, it's finding a way to get off the field on third downs. If ASU can't find ways to convert, they're going to be in trouble. But to round out this episode, let's give the people what they want. Nick, who is winning this game? Do you have a score prediction? I'll throw it to you first.
I do. I'm actually a little bit curious if you could give me some insight here. What were the lines over at FanDuel for the over-under, our friends over at FanDuel?
Our friends over at FanDuel placed the over-under here at 49.5 points.
I think I'm going to take the under here, but it's going to be close. Give me Iowa State 27-24. And I think it really does. I said this earlier this week. I think it comes down to a last-second possession. Maybe Kyle Conradi kicks it through and cements himself as a kicker here at Iowa State.
Well, props to you for giving us a field goal. I appreciate it. That would get us just over 50%. For me, I'm with you. And initially, my score prediction also had ASU getting a field goal. But the more I think about it, and it's not even so much that ASU's been so bad at kicking field goals this year. To me, it's more of Kenny Dillingham, if he gets into a situation where it could be fourth and go. We'll say anything from 4th and 6 and in. Even if you're in field goal range, if you're in plus territory, I think there's a really strong chance that Kenny strongly considers going for it on 4th down instead of kicking field goals and potentially wasting possessions, which is why, to me, I ended up subtracting the field goal from my final score here. Of course, I am taking ASU. I do have Iowa State covering a 2.5-point spread. I have a slight over here. Give me ASU 28-27 in a game that is just going to be a thriller of a matchup.
So the Sundevils missed an extra point then? Is that what that is there?
They very well could. I'm hoping we go 4 for 4. The good news is they've been pretty good with kicking field goals this year, or field goals with PATs. They're 49-51. So they should got that much going for you. I'd be pretty upset if you were shanking PATs on a pretty consistent basis. But Nick, I really appreciate the time. I, of course, have had a blast. This is going to be a really, really fun game. Let's end it with this. Your confidence level for Iowa State to win. 1 to 10. 1 being absolutely no chance. 10 being ASU doesn't have a chance. And we'll say 5 is probably about the middle. Obviously, what a concept. Let me give it to you. 1 to 10. Where are you at?
Okay, first, I'd like to say this is one of the most anticipated games, obviously, in Ames history. This is unbelievable, and it's going to be so much fun. I cannot wait. Everything around this game is just going to be electric. Secondly, I'd like to say, I don't know if I did my math right on the over-under in that last segment. Leave it in the comments below. I may have messed that up. There's a reason I'm not a math major. Last but not least here, I am going to go, you said 10 was super confident?
10 is super confident. As confident as you can be. ASU has no chance.
Give me an 8.1. I'd like to take the Cyclones here. I'm pretty confident, and I think one thing we didn't touch on today, the coaching. Matt Campbell's been there before. Granted, Kenny Dillingham is awesome. He really is. Okay, but I just wonder if the ability of Matt Campbell to control his athletes' emotions throughout this game maybe plays a factor. He knows what to expect, how big the atmosphere, how big the stadium. Obviously, the field's the exact same size, but if you can't see the curtains out there in Jerry World, which I don't know if they'll be up or down, but if you can't see that, it's gonna play a difference. So I like the Cyclones here. I am pretty confident. There's a reason I'm going down to the game, and I think part of it is Matt Campbell. I can't either. I cannot either.
This is a really interesting game for ASU. You mentioned it's one of the biggest games in Ames history. It's one of the biggest games in history for Tempe, Arizona as well. A college football playoff appearance is on the line for both of these teams. This is a really big game. I'm also pretty confident in ASU. I wouldn't go an 8.1. I'll go just a little lower. I'll say a 7.2. I do think that ASU should be able to handle business, but it's a veteran coach, and I love Matt Campbell. He's terrific, and I love that you pointed that out. He does have that advantage over Kenny Dillingham, a very young head coach, and that could also prove to be a difference in this game. I just love the way ASU is playing right now. There's not a team in the country, whether you're number 1 Oregon or you're dead last, whoever you are, that ASU does not feel confident about to go in and beat you right now. They're playing with an edge. I love ASU to be able to get out and get the win. But Nick, really appreciate the time, my friend. Where can the good people find all of your Iowa State Cyclones coverage?
Hey, Locked On Cyclones, obviously new to the program. Don't forget to go check us out over there.
Hit subscribe.
Yes, subscribe so I can afford my trip down to watch the Cyclones win the Big 12 championship. And then I think it's right underneath my name down here, Nick_Marv. That's kind of where I put my personal thoughts on games. So a little correspondence there is also very possible.
There you go. And if you want to follow me as well, you can find me at Richie Brads 36. That's Brads with a Z. You can subscribe to Locked On Sundevils wherever you're getting your podcast. Same place as Locked On Cyclones. This has been a Locked On crossover edition of Locked On Sundevils and Locked On Cyclones. Appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in. A shout out to the everydayers who are here every day. We will see you guys on Saturday. Until then, you keep it locked right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.